It's the Titterpigs, the RPG podcast. Am I getting paid for this one?
In the SK system, Your Majesty, the inhabitants refer to it as the planet Earth.
How peaceful it looks.
Hey listeners, welcome back. This is episode 23 of Titterpigs. Holy crap, Scott, we have made it to 23. You know what, though? We said that with 22, 21, 20, and when we hit the 2 digits. So, Wow.
Now we can officially start our DNA corporation, 23 and me? And Kevin. Yes, that I do write my own material, everyone.
Oh my God, don't quit your day job, bro.
Don't worry about that. Yes, so we are back, and we are back with another episode where we have a guest on to talk to and get
Who's
some
our guest
insight.
tonight, Scott?
Well, I will tell you if you don't step on me. I mean, you make editing so difficult, and don't edit this out either.
It's my job.
Who do we have tonight? Well, who we have tonight is someone with a fantastic background and pedigree when it comes to all things geekery in the geek world. We have with us tonight one Scott A. Woodard.
That's correct.
And welcome. For those of you who know Scott, you know him probably most predominantly as the author of the Flash Gordon Savage Worlds role-playing game. Hope I'm getting that correct. And also Pinebox Middle School, that I know many people, including several of our friends, are excited about. But we're going to discover many other things that Scott does and has done throughout his career. And as stated, that kind of will prove that Scott has more geek cred in his little pinky toe than most of us have had or experienced throughout entire life. Scott, welcome to Titterpigs. It's so glad to have you.
Well, thank you for that glorious intro. I hope I don't let you down.
Oh, you don't worry about that. That's our job. Our job is to let our guests down. That's
my job to let our guests down.
Fingers crossed.
Yes. So as stated, for those who aren't aware, Scott does he does a lot of writing within the hobby. He does a lot of editing. He has his toes in several different properties and genres throughout. And as stated, we'll discover some other things as we go along. But before we continue, we are doing the old hat that a lot of our fellow podcasters do on gaming podcast. We would like to know, what was your initial introduction with role-playing games?
Okay. Well, I have to pause because a cat just jumped on my lap.
It wouldn't be Titterpigs without a cat.
Exactly. Yeah. The cat on the lap. I would say I go back to, I think it was Christmas of 78 when my parents actually gifted my brother and I a Holmes basic D&D set. And
Nice.
It was a month. Well, I wouldn't say even a month. A couple weeks later, so probably in the early part of 79, that my brother, as DM, ran a game at our dining room table with me and my parents as players. It was the first and only time my parents ever played D&D. But I applaud them for actually sitting down and doing it. My father played a magic user. My mom was the cleric. I was an elf. Because, of course, this is old school, basic.
Right.
I was an elf named Vilto. I still have the character sheets, believe it or not.
Wow.
And Vilto has existed in one form or another throughout my entire career. And even in my gaming career, he was my first EverQuest character. And Warcraft, I brought Vilto back. So he's always been around. He's haunted me. At some point, I suppose I should write a novel. It's sort of following the footsteps of Gary writing, Gord the Rogue stuff. But so, yeah, it goes all the way back to 78.
Wow. I mean, that right there, I think is a bit of an exception to the rule. Even though your parents gave it the good college try initially, most of us, of a certain age who were able to experience role-playing games of that period essentially was either, here you go, now leave me alone. We were, the 80s latchkey kid. Here's something to keep you busy while we're doing more important things like work and other things. But
that was me. Yeah. Totally.
Well, I don't think we had much choice because it was January in upstate New York. So surely I'm sure there was a lot of snow. There wasn't much else we could do. And we ripped open this box and tore into it. And my brother learned the rules before I did.
And another thing, I think that tends to be a tad of an exception to the rule is, I don't think, at least for me, we actually learned the rules until many, many years later, maybe up to even second edition. At that finally point, it's like, oh, crap. We've been doing this wrong.
I'm still figuring out the rules, and I'm almost, I'm in my late 40s. I'm still learning the rules. All right, let's be honest.
Oh yeah. So, and I still have a Holmes basic D&D set on that shelf back there. It's not the original one, but I've been rebuilding my nostalgia inventory over the last few years.
Oh,
that's awesome.
As have I. People call that midlife crisis, but I do, like you, call it rebuilding my old library.
Right. I call it draining my bank account.
Well, there's that too. But
my wife calls it the midlife crisis. I call it draining my bank account.
So your introduction, was Dungeons and Dragons, which took you, I would assume, like many others, towards discovering other games. But from there, Keith and I do extensive research on all of our guests 5 minutes before we start. And one of the things that we can see that's easily described in your biography, not only on RPG Geek, but you have a very extensive IMDb page cataloging your career within the movie industry. Specifically, it seems, within special effects and certain things such as that. And I would have to imagine that, a young Scott, discovering things such as Dungeons and Dragons, that also you were engaging in other things of, flights of, fancy and fantasy and science fiction.
Oh, yeah.
So what were some of those things that you discovered, and how did these things lead to, your career within the movie industry?
Well, everything's all connected, of course.
Mm-hmm.
I went from basic D&D, like you said, into other games. Obviously, AD&D was first, and then it started to collect everything I could then, and then it was like Gamma World and a few other early releases back then in the day, and then I discovered friends in school who shared an interest in gaming, but also shared an interest in making movies. And so seventh grade, we formed a little film club. At the same time, we were playing D&D, but we formed a group and we started shooting Super 8 movies. And so we shot a lot of ridiculous films, which we still have. They're around. Someday they'll make it online. And so we shot a lot of stuff on film. Then we discovered video, and that changed everything. And we just kept shooting stuff. And then it got to the point where we all collectively agreed that eventually we'd wind up in the film industry. It was just going to happen somehow. And one of my best friends went off to film school. I did not. I actually did theater and radio and TV production.
Mm-hmm.
And this was all on the East Coast. But then my best friend preceded me to LA, and I moved out about 2 years later.
Mm-hmm.
And this was right after I graduated from college. And the next thing I know, literally the day after I moved to LA, I was already working for a special effects company as a gopher, just running errands. And then that led to being trained to machine parts for animatronic puppets, mm-hmm. and painting and all sorts of other stuff. And the rest was sort of history for a long time. And I wound up working on several B and C grade movies, D grade movies. I worked for like Roger Corman and Full Moon Productions, if anybody knows them, the Puppet Master movies and things like that. I worked on a few of those.
Yes.
And and then it went into exiting that industry for a while and working in television as a writer producer. Mm-hmm. And the list goes on and on and on. So that's sort of how that all came together. The funny thing is that my friends who I gamed with as a kid, mm-hmm. We still game together. One of them is in Seattle. But another one still lives here in LA, and we get together. As a matter of fact, we get together every Thursday night and play face-to-face games. We play role-playing games face-to-face, and he's one of my friends from back east, and we're still good friends.
That is awesome. So what are you two currently playing, out of curiosity?
Our Thursday night group primarily plays Savage Worlds,
Okay.
just because everybody in the group is really comfortable with it.
Mhm.
We do a lot of one-shots, so we tend to experiment. We'll either try our own settings, or we'll dip into licensed settings, or of course all the various official settings that have been produced, including 3 that I've done. And but let's see. So right now I'm running Savage Worlds Pathfinder.
Okay.
We'll also play Deadlands Noir, Dead End, which is a zombie game. We play a homebrew Star Wars, a homebrew Star Trek, and all of them are Savage Worlds based. Not to say that we won't play other games. We all own hundreds and hundreds of different RPGs, but for the most part, we do Savage Worlds.
So let me ask you this. So this comes up on social media all the time, since you mentioned one shot. So define a one shot. All right, for listeners, because one shot apparently means something different to everybody. So what is y'all's definition of a one shot?
I mean, so there are a couple different types of one shot that we do. Sure. I mean, there's certainly the one that would be like a convention game that you're going to go in and we're going to throw some pre-gens on the table and we'll just run a 4-hour session or a 3-hour session, and there will be hopefully a conclusion to that game. So we do some of those. The first time I ran Pinebox Middle School for them, I used the pre-gens right out of the game. But we also will do games where we'll all create characters and just have these one evening sessions. So we just did a Star Trek one that was actually we've done 2 Star Treks so far, and those have been a lot of fun. And we have 2 characters. We have a bridge crew, and then we have an away team crew. And so we run 2 characters simultaneously and bounce back and forth, and that's a lot of fun. But yeah, so we'll either run them, like I say, with pre-gens, just like a con game, or we'll bring these characters back periodically. We'll advance them accordingly, but they'll still just be one evening, 2, 3, 4-hour games. So that's how we do them.
Okay. That's cool. I'm always curious about different people's perspective on what a one shot is, because sometimes it's a short 2 or 3 evening story arc that's a one shot, or a 4-hour session, or just in one evening, and then like you guys put the characters on the shelf and then take them down a few months later and play them again. And
we do all of that. I think the exception
I tend
right
to do
now,
that too. So
yeah, the only exception for our group right now is that I've been running Pathfinder, and I'm actually taking them through the published adventures. So we are running that as a campaign, but we only do Pathfinder like once a month. The other games are all just our one evening single session type stuff.
Now, did you have experience with traditional Pathfinder before trying out the Savage Worlds version, or was this your first leap into Pathfinder?
It was my first leap. I mean, well, that's not 100% true. I mean, I played 3.5, and so I at least I didn't play 3.75, as they say, right, for Pathfinder First Edition anyway.
Right.
And I did pick up the second edition playtest when they released it at Gen Con, and gave that a read through, but didn't really play anything with it. But we were really craving doing some fantasy role playing, and like I said, everybody in my group is a Savage Worlds fan, so it was easy enough to just say, hey, let's just do Pathfinder. And so far we've been having a blast with it. Yeah.
A friend of ours who does streaming, James Chambers of Roleplay, has been streaming the Pathfinder Savage Worlds game for a bit now with one of my friends who lives locally here in California. So he'll log on through Zoom or whatever, and both of them have a lot of high praise for it. They really, really have been enjoying themselves with it. So and it's good to hear. It is one of those things where you're like, wait, pineapple on pizza? Are you sure? I don't know, but people who have taken time and sat down with it, do give it their thumbs up and their approval on it, and it's good to know. It's good to hear.
Yeah, it's definitely somebody got chocolate in my peanut butter kind of a situation, but it winds up being really delicious.
Who put pineapple in my Nutella? I mean, come on, what is that? So
how did you end up
how did you end up with like Savage Worlds? So like I looked at your your credits on RPG Geek, and I don't know that it's all of the things that you've worked on, but that's what's listed. You have credit for there because those are fandom entered things,
right?
But all but 3 things are Savage Worlds related. So how did you get involved with working with Savage Worlds and just in general playing Savage Worlds? Like,
right. Okay. Well, so I was a big Deadlands Classic fan.
Okay.
I just immediately fell in love with that setting. So I had a pretty significant library of orange-spined books for a long time.
I can appreciate that.
And, rolling handfuls of dice and all that kind of thing. But there was a weird period around that time where I was playing less and less, just overwhelmed with all sorts of other side projects, not really too much gaming. And then I saw this book on the shelf called Savage Worlds, and this was first edition, so this was quite a few years ago. And I just blindly picked it up after flipping through the pages. This was at the Last Grenadier that no longer exists here in Burbank. And I flipped through it, bought it. I remember sitting outside getting Starbucks and just like flipping through this book and going, I think this is clicking already for me. And it was a fairly slender volume, but it was a hardcover, all black and white, the first edition. And we tried it. And then of course, when we really enjoyed it, we liked what it was doing. And it also was one of those things where, I was at that age, this was like 20 plus years ago, where it was like, okay, well, I'm starting this, slow down, step away from the gaming thing, but maybe this one will work. Maybe because a lot of the other stuff was so burdensome. It was just these colossal tomes that were coming at us. And I was just not really into reading tons of more rules, and it became more like math and counting.
I understand the math finder problem.
Exactly. So we tried Savage Worlds. We really liked it. Then, of course, when Deadlands Reloaded came out, which was the first Deadlands iteration using Savage Worlds, that 100% worked. And my group loved it, and we just had a blast. And it was like, oh, I get this now. I understand this system. And so I started picking up everything that was coming out. Just blindly, wantonly, getting whatever popped up on the shelf, even licensed properties at that time, which wasn't too many. And what happened was I was in the forums in the Pinnacle site, and I noticed that Triple Ace Games had announced that their editor was stepping down. And that day, that hour, I immediately responded and said, "Hey, I'm an editor. I maybe I could help you out." And I got word from it might have been Wiggy at the time, Paul Wiggy Wade Williams. I think he reached out to me directly and said, "Hey, listen, I've got one manuscript here. We could do sort of a test and see how you work out." So he sent it to me, and I think it was one of their Daring Tales of Adventure. And I did a quick edit pass on that and sent it back. And they were like, "Okay, well, would you like to do more?" And so, of course, I had no previous RPG editing experience. I have a problem with saying no. Let's preface all of this. Let's have a break here. So whenever I've had any opportunities to do work, whether in the film industry, gaming industry, more often than not, somebody will come to me and say, "Hey, can you do this?" And I usually just say, "Yeah, of course I can." And then I quickly learn how. And that was the same case with RPG stuff. It was like, well, I've played games. Surely I can do this. And I'm also a writer. I had written plenty. And this is actually skipping my whole time working for Warner Brothers and stuff. Maybe we'll go back to that. So I said, yeah. And then I took more on, and they started sending me checks, and I started working on stuff. I wound up doing, I think, editing something like 50 manuscripts for Triple Ace Games. I mean, just a huge quantity. Wow. A lot of that stuff were short adventures or whatever, but they would then compile them into, they did like, I have here this, I don't know if you can see it, but this is like one of their Daring Tales of the Sprawl compendium. And this was the first one where everything in this book I edited, and my name's in the front there. And I did a bunch of their stuff for Hellfrost and other Daring Tales stuff. And I did a Necropolis, whatever their Necropolis game was. I edited one of those books. And that's just sort of how that happened. And then that led to Shane finding out, Shane of Pinnacle Entertainment Group, Shane Hensley, finding out that I was editing other stuff. And I don't know how that actually happened. And I got a chance to do an edit pass on the Hell on Earth Reloaded. So the Deadlands Hell on Earth Reloaded.
Yes.
And I did that, and then that led to editing Deadlands Noir. So I edited that for John Goff. And the next thing that happened after that was Shane said, "Do you want to write an RPG?" And I said, "Yes, of course. I'm very experienced with that." And I quickly learned how to write an RPG.
Now we know.
And that's how I got the Six Gun, which was the first one. And little side note here. So the Six Gun is based on a really awesome graphic novel series by Cullen Bunn, published by Oni Press. If you haven't read it, I highly encourage you to track down the graphic novels. They're fantastic.
I'm going to go to the comic shop this weekend and go look for it.
Okay.
Because Cullen Bunn stuff is fantastic.
Oh, he's so great. Yeah, he's so great. And the Six Gun stuff is absolutely wonderful. And one of the things that happened, it was a funny little side note, was that Shane said, "Hey, Scott, are you familiar with the Six Gun?" And I said, "Yeah, I love that series." I had never read a page of it. What are you are you serious? Like, of course, I quickly did read all of it and fell in love with it. Thank goodness. But yeah, honestly, sometimes you just got to fib a little bit.
Fake it till you make it. That's
Exactly.
sounds kind of like my career too, in so many different ways and whatnot.
Of course.
Yeah. You know,
Sounds like how I became an editor in the role-playing game industry. Ooh, should I not say that on the air? No, I'm just kidding.
I mean, you both of you obviously have, paid your dues, so to speak. So it's okay to make confessions, as they say, better to better to how's the saying go? It's better to
regret the whole regret thing. Is that what you're saying? Regret something you have done than to regret something you haven't done? That, or no,
it's better to
I ask for forgiveness than permission.
Yeah, it's better to ask for forgiveness than permission sometimes.
Right.
Yes, yeah, but no, that's interesting. That's very interesting. And I would dare say that, there's probably quite a few out there that may not admit it, but may have taken that same path. And in fact, I think we know a few people that have confessed to that, in confidence and online chats and in the online pub that we go to. So we won't name names, but yeah, there's the occasional going of, "Hey, I'm working on this. I know nothing about it."
We're fast learners. That's what it comes down to.
Now, for Scott's benefit, since he's well versed in Savage Worlds, and I don't know how many times I've said this on air, like in episodes, but
42.
This might be 43 then. I don't know. We're only on episode 23, Scott. I'm not the biggest fan of Savage Worlds. I don't know if I've said that on the air, but apparently you've listened to all the episodes, so you can correct me if I'm wrong.
No, you said it.
I have? Okay, good. I've said it. Now I'm saying it again. I come from a background where I have played it. I have enjoyed some games. Scott and I have a friend, Debbie, who I know you're aware of because I know she's fallen in love with the
East Texas University.
East Texas U, and she's looking forward to Pinebox Middle, and and I enjoyed when she ran it, and I enjoyed playing it. It's just not a game that has mechanically super clicked for me, but I'm acquainted with Clint Black and his wife Jody and their daughter. And I used to run a convention here in coastal South Carolina. They used to come run Savage Saturdays for me at my convention. It used to be a very prominent thing at my convention here, and it used to draw lots of people just to come play Savage World. So I know it's super popular. People love it. I love some of the things Pinnacle has done in terms of, the themes like Deadlands Noir. I love the concept of the noir game. The Weird Wars 1, the Weird Wars Rome. But none of it's other than the noir has really clicked with me, but I don't know, maybe it's the mechanics. It just never clicked with me, but I don't know.
That's fine. That's totally fine. I mean, there's plenty of games that people are playing out there right now that are hugely popular, 5th edition, that I don't care for. I got
a little on my chin.
I played in a short campaign, 5th edition campaign. I respect the game,
sure,
but it just didn't work for me. I found myself struggling to try to figure out, feats and this and that, and it was like, what, I just want to roll dice and make things happen. I wasn't being allowed to do that because there were just so many layers to it. So for that reason, 5th edition didn't work for me. A lot of indies don't work for me. I find them to be sort of one-hit wonders. Everyone goes crazy and bonkers over certain indies, and I'm like, well, that's a fun one-time party game, but then I'm never going to revisit that. And so, yeah, and
I
Fate
find that
did
to be
not
the
work
case
for
a
me
lot,
either.
too.
Fate absolutely did not work for me.
No.
And I did the most embarrassing thing, one of the most embarrassing things for me in the gaming industry. I was on a Happy Jacks episode, and I was playing Fate. I was brought in to play Fate. It was my first time, and I was struggling.
Even though you said you did play it previously, but go on.
No, I did not. That one I did say that it was my first time, and but it was just, it was one of those things where the other people at the table were having a blast and they had a lot of experience with it, but it didn't work for me. And I think that's one of the great things about our hobby, is that because there are so many different types of games out there, there is definitely something for everyone.
Right.
And right now in my life, Savage Worlds still works for me. I love all the toys. I love cards and bennies, and I'm a minis guy, so I always have maps and minis on my table. I like that sort of tactical aspect of the game, but it's not for everyone. I mean, and I play other games too. So
right now, I will absolutely say that I respect the game. I think people that play it and enjoy it. Now, there are certain people in my circle of friends and acquaintances that I will give absolute shit to. Because it's fun to antagonize them, and if they're playing Savage Worlds Pathfinder, I double down on giving them shit because it's that much more fun. James, I'm talking to you, just because I love giving them shit, and I love you, James. But I'm not a Pathfinder fan. Like, I played 3.75 first edition Pathfinder, and I needed a PhD in mathematics just to play after about the third supplement, and I quit playing it at that point. But beyond that, I mean, I'm not opposed to going back and re-engaging with Savage Worlds. I think there's something to it. And like, I enjoyed my time playing with Debbie, and I told Debbie if she ran another game of ETU, or when Pinebox Middle delivers from the Kickstarter that she backed, I would totally like jump in on another game, especially if Scott's character rejoins.
Oh God, yes.
The story.
I've been exercising my glutes. She is ready to go. Got a new pair of Daisy Dukes and everything.
In her chaps.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's a different experience for me with Savage Worlds, and it's I enjoy the game. And obviously this is no slight against Keith. Like you said, people enjoy what they enjoy, and the most important thing you can do is don't take offense to that. If someone doesn't like something you don't like in the hobby, I never understood that that kind of that affront. I don't like Pathfinder. Well, why? Give me a good reason why. It's like, no, fuck off.
Yeah.
But and I'll just you can curse on here if you like, if that's your thing. Don't worry about that. But the thing with Savage Worlds. Sorry, if I said Pathfinder, I meant Savage Worlds. The thing with Savage Worlds is it's got a special place for me because, one, after my son and his friends discovered 5th edition when they were younger, and they were looking to move on to something, we tried a couple things, and I think I may have overstepped. They were way too young, and I was way too stupid to figure out Conan 2D20 when I first got it. I likewise, I purchased just because I'd like the look of the cover. I knew nothing about it. I did buy Blades in the Dark, and that was a colossal failure with young kids, as it should be. Oh my God. But we got Savage Worlds, and not only did it click with them, but we got Deadlands, and it just clicked. It clicked for me. It clicked for them. They enjoyed it. We played so many games of it. Ran a little mini campaign. And I think that was kind of like the Rosetta Stone with them. Like, after they kind of grasped that, we ventured to a couple of other things, and things just became easier, as opposed. And then likewise, one of the things that they enjoyed is it seemed to be, easier to grasp and comprehend over 5e. The kind of stuff that they wanted to do in 5e that kind of had to be implemented aside from the rules was baked into Savage Worlds. They wanted that pulp aspect. They wanted the crazy thing. They wanted to, they wanted to be sitting across from that cowboy, take their toothpick out of their mouth, flick it in his eye, and explode that die, and essentially make that toothpick go right through his skull. And they cheered and loved it. And so it's got a little special place in my heart for that. But the other thing that I found out with my discovery, as I delve deeper into it, is one of the things that I found about Savage Worlds is, there's a lot of wonderful settings, in there, but for whatever reason, they have probably one of the best resources, in my opinion, of licensed properties. Some of the things that has been produced for Savage Worlds by, either through Pinnacle or maybe, third party, just is superb. I mean, I know there's been kind of derivatives of it, but when I discovered that there was a Solomon Kane setting, I jumped through hoops to try to get it. They took their hand with Lankmar, they took their hand with so many different things, and it just it leans himself so much better to these different genres and properties. And no offense to those of you who tried it, than some of the others out there. I think the only one out there that kind of can handle that pulpy sword and sorcery aspect in certain genres would be like Dungeon Crawl Classics. Yeah.
Bravo.
So, but
I'm a big DCC fan.
Oh yeah,
we all are. Yeah, it's good.
So yeah, I mean, and it's, but again, if Keith. If Keith takes exception to it, I know he's joking. If there's someone out there in the world that that takes exception to someone not liking Savage Worlds, I mean, please, just take a chill pill.
Yeah.
But no,
I would never be like that. My whole thing is that as long as it brings you to the table and has you gaming, you can play whatever the fuck you want. I really don't care.
Right. And that's what it boils down to.
Absolutely, 100%. And if I'm playing something and loving it and it's not your game, go play something else, or join us at the table and give it a shot. I think one of you I know in one of your previous shows had said something about making a point of trying stuff that at cons or whatever that you've never played before. And
I think that was me.
Yeah, it might have been you, Keith. Sometimes you have to actually look at something that maybe you think won't work for you and give that a try as well.
Right, because that is when I go to cons, unless there are no other options, I will specifically build out my play schedule for games that I have never played before for two reasons. One, I want to try new things. Right. New experiences with new people and new games. Actually, three things. For that reason, I want to find new things that I find that I can be passionate about. Right. New games that I like. I'd like to keep a running total of new games that I've played in that calendar year. Right. So did I play 10 new games this year or 20 new games or just 3? That's my chance to do it, whether it's an online convention or a face-to-face convention at Gen Con or Origins or wherever I get to that year. So I strive for that. That is my goal at conventions, unless there are just no real good options. And I will go to my, old favorites, my standbys, DCC, old school D&D, I would not, what's that?
Tingleverse.
Did you say GURPS?
The Tingleverse. No, he said Tingleverse.
I would do Tingleverse. Totally do Tingleverse.
Yes.
But I would go to games that I've played before that I've enjoyed over games that I have played before that I haven't enjoyed.
Yeah, I don't think I would do too much of that.
Yeah, exactly.
I really didn't like. Yeah.
So that actually brings me to another question. So in your RPG Geek credits are given credit for a scenario in a game that I absolutely love. And it is not Torg Eternity.
Kids on Bikes.
Kids on Bikes. I love this fucking game.
I see you have the hardcover. So you have the one. That
I
has
have
my
everything they've published.
Okay.
Not the second for first edition. I did not back the second edition because I didn't think it warranted me spending more money for a few minor changes. So sorry, spoiler alert on that one. So how
you'll buy it?
What's that?
I said you'll buy it eventually.
I will, because
I'm sure you will.
I'm a fanboy. But my question is, how did you get? So your RPG Geek credits, like I said previously, are all but 3 things are Savage Worlds, and we've talked about that. So how did you get involved in writing a scenario for Kids on Bikes, which was originally for the Kickstarter for the deluxe edition book?
Right.
I'm quite curious. So tell me.
That one is shrouded in mystery to some extent as well.
Let's talk.
I think I just had interaction with a couple of the guys on that project, and it was one of those things where at the time the Six Gun might have been out. I mean, I'm trying to remember if Flash was already out as well, or maybe we had done the Kickstarter for Flash. So I was very active online promoting games and stuff that I had written. Okay. And I know they were trying to wrangle a bunch of sort of newer talent to contribute as Kickstarter stretch goals.
Right.
So they threw a few friends of mine in. It's possible that one of them had suggested me.
Okay.
But honestly, I didn't go seeking that one. That one actually came to me, which was awfully nice.
Okay, that's cool.
And it's frustrating now because there's stuff in that module that I would have loved to have used in Pinebox Middle School. But I'm ethical when it comes to, use, and I know that, those are in Kids on Bikes now. I may have adapted a few little minor things, but yeah.
So tell us and listeners about Spicerville, New York.
It's my hometown.
Is it? Okay.
Yeah.
I was curious. Is that
my hometown? Yeah, I'm upstate New York. My hometown is actually Spencerport.
Okay.
When I was growing up, one of my best friends used to call it Spencerville. So that kind of just devolved into Spicerville. And a lot of the things, both in Kids on Bikes and in that module anyway, and in Pinebox Middle School, are based on my childhood. I've had discussions about this in previous podcasts, and people thought I was deranged. But a lot of those things were either childhood, or sort of urban fantasy stories, urban legends. Okay. Although I came from a cornfield infested little village, so not really urban. But we had a whole bunch of crazy stories about the area that wound up being adapted for both projects, and then some were personal beliefs that I had as a child.
So let's clarify. So where you grew up in BFE, New York, you had cults, demonic possessions, drowning, and hosts. Okay, that's good to know.
Yeah, we had plenty of those. Yeah.
Sounds like where I grew up in Massachusetts. Thank you.
Yeah. There's a couple things that didn't wind up in either of the projects that I will bring up at some point. But no, I mean, my whole thing was growing up in a very rural environment. We were, of course, the generation where we would just go, crack of dawn, wander away from the house, disappear until the sun went down, if not later. Our parents had no idea where we were, how to get in touch with us. We might as well just have walked off and that would have been it. Good. Maybe there's a chance we'll come home. Who knows? But my whole thing was that I grew up with a lot of forests, a lot of woods, a lot of abandoned houses, all that kind of stuff. And so I would go off and just explore those things on my own. And when you're doing that at that age, that ripe young age, and you're playing D&D, and you're into horror films and stuff, you start to develop these scenarios in your head. What's out here? What's in this forest? What's going to be in that house I go into? What did I just see over there? Well, let's fill in the gaps. And a lot of those things sort of stuck around. And so I have a thing in Pinebox Middle School, for example. It's an adventure about the Greenlees, which is a family name. But when I was a kid, I swore up and down that there were these green men that would climb outside off the roof of the townhouse I grew up in, and they would climb down the water drain and try to suck my soul out or something. And if I didn't look at them, they couldn't see my eyes. They wouldn't be able to. So all this stuff, you draw all these weird little childhood memories and fucked up things that come up in your head, and you turn them into adventure scenarios and settings.
Now I understand the touchstones that you have in this scenario, which are Children of the Corn and Children of the Stones, the TV minis, the British TV miniseries.
Oh yeah.
I totally get
really
it
messed
now.
Up show.
Yeah. Totally get it. That's awesome.
And they all gave you the willies, and that's why I added the willies.
I love Kids on Bikes. I fell in love with it. I never backed the original. Like I found it kind of by happenstance. I found it, and when I did, I was all in on it. I'm like, I gotta find it. I got the deluxe edition. I got the free RPG day scenario. What is it, like Maple Street or whatever it is? And I got the second scenario book for it. I absolutely love the game.
Now they're my greatest enemy.
What's that?
Now they're my greatest enemy because our Kickstarters were running at the exact same time. Pinebox Middle School and Kids on Bikes. So for a while we were doing better than they were, and of course I was cheering us on. But and then they wound up beating us by a little bit. But we still had a very successful Kickstarter. We were like 170,000. It wasn't bad.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So, I love the dueling Kickstarters.
Yeah, the dueling Kickstarters.
Oh, that was funny. If you watch one of the, I think we might have actually mentioned it in both live streams, because we did a live stream at the top of the Kickstarter and then one at the close, and inevitably we discussed our race, our war that was going on in friendliest terms possible. But we were talking about how we were kind of friendly rivals, and I'm sure they were thinking the same thing on their side.
Oh, you could totally take the cut scene from the lightsaber battle between Anakin and Obi-Wan and just superimpose your logos on each face and just I've got
for a while we had the high ground.
Right.
I just want to say for the record though, not that I'm even remotely in the same league. I have written a Kids on Bikes scenario that I released for Patreon for my Rolling Boxcars, my blog's Patreon. That was supposed to, I think in 2022, the Hunter Entertainment was supposed to release on their Friday freebies. They were gonna, as an agreement for them to do my layout. I don't know if it ever got released through them or not, but I agreed to let them do that if they did my layout and their font, using their font and all of that stuff.
Right.
So I don't know.
It's funny you bring up Hunter, because Ivan Van Norman and I, we go back quite a few years as well. So
nice.
Yeah, that's a very strange thing, meeting up with Ivan and his mother at a bar in Eugene, Oregon.
Okay.
I have so many tangential stories to my life. They're
oh my god, yeah, wow, okay.
So I've got a question. I brought up licensed products with Savage Worlds a little bit back, and you handled a very large one, to be perfectly honest. And not only is it a well-known license, it is probably one of the oldest sci-fi IPs out there. And so the Flash Gordon thing, how did that fall into your lap? And I'm curious on, what was the process? Because you obviously there's quite a bit of information out there, and your Flash Gordon seems to be traditionally, more of the traditional old school Flash Gordon, but it looks like you may have mixed, some of the other aspects of it. I seem to recall I see a little bit of the, obviously the movie in there, and even some of the old, was it the old 80s cartoon and stuff that's mixed in there also. But what was obviously a lot of research had to be involved in that. So what was the process that you did with that after you said, yes, I know everything about Flash Gordon, and then had to go find out everything about Flash Gordon?
Right.
He had to read Flash Gordon, watch Flash Gordon.
No. So right. I was a Flash Gordon fan.
Okay. Fantastic.
On this one, 100%. I grew up with Flash Gordon. I grew up with the serials. I was a huge fan of the cartoon. When I was a kid, I wanted to be Thun the Lion Man, just so I could beat up the bullies in school. And so I was a Flash Gordon fan through and through. I had read tons of comics, the original strips, all that stuff. And that was one where Shane is Flash in my eyes. Shane Hensley from Pinnacle did reach out and said, what's your familiarity with Flash Gordon? And I said, I'm an enormous fan of Flash Gordon. And he said, well, we got the license, and would you like to do it? And of course, again, without hesitation, I said, yes, absolutely, 100%. But like you said, it was 80 plus years of IP and history. Right. And going back to the original strips, and then the radio serials and the film serials with Buster Crabbe, and the 1950s, German co-produced TV serials, and the 80s cartoon, and the comics, and the spin-off after spin-off. And you'll notice I'll never mention the Sci-Fi Channel live action series. I just mentioned it, so we can move on now. That does not in any way appear in the Flash Gordon role-playing game. What does actually appear in some minor little form are nods to the X-rated Flash Gordon, but nobody in the world.
Wait, hold on. You have my interest in Savage Worlds now. Flash Gordon? Hold on. Let's talk about this.
So if you've never seen it, I do encourage you to track it down.
Yes.
It was made in the 70s. It's an X-rated film. I mean, by today's standards, it's like a heavy R, if that.
Right.
Okay.
But back then it was an X-rated film. It's very funny. The character names are hysterical. The spaceship designs are great. The monsters are amazing. There's stop motion animation from legendary animators in the film industry. A lot of people in the film industry cut their teeth on that movie.
Mm-hmm.
And so there are nods to Harryhausen with certain creatures. Track it down. You will enjoy it. It's a blast. But my whole thing was, when I was writing Flash Gordon, my goal was to have something in there for every fan of Flash Gordon.
Yeah.
And it was a chore. It really was. It was years. Literally, I think I spent a year or two reading and digesting everything I could get my hands on. So that was every strip, even running through the 50s and 60s and sometimes later. I have collections over here on the shelves. And again, listening to all the radio serials and taking copious notes. I had spreadsheets that just go on for miles, and trying to build my bestiary out of stuff from the comics. And also, as I said, trying to bring in something from everything. And that did include a few things from the 1980 film as well.
Right.
So not only did we get Sam Jones to write the foreword to the core rulebook, which was an amazing thing for us to have, for
nice.
For us to get. But he wrote that. And then, but I also have little nods in there, even though they're not direct nods, because we did have some concerns about the film perhaps being tied up with Universal or whatever studio owns it at this point. I'm not sure. And so we were like, well, stick to the stuff that's strictly King features. Let's not go with the more recent comic books, because those are like Dynamite, and I think IDW or something had another run. So we didn't really go to use those. But I'm telling you, everything else was fair game. And that even included like reading novels that were published in the 80s and 70s that very few people have read. And so there's things from those books that are in our bestiary. There are things from the movie. Like I said, if you go into our psionic section, you'll see the symbol that's on Clytus's chest. And we do have, I mean, our punch out figures and miniatures, we did do effectively a Clytus, but we never referred to it as Clytus.
Right.
And we came up with why Clytus, and oh God, I was totally spacing on her name. Oh gosh, another character from Flash Gordon. Anyway, they have very similar symbols on their chest. They wear black. I came up with how psionic characters have to regenerate, and that's why Clytus turns to goo at the end of the movie, and all this kind of stuff. So in every possible way, I wanted to put something in there for every stripe of Flash Gordon fan. And it's been a lot of fun, because I belong to a variety of Flash Gordon groups online, including comic groups and film groups. And everybody who's picked up the book has caught all the little things I've put in there that have not been nods to there.
Even Defenders of the Earth, is that in there somewhere?
No Defenders of the Earth. Yeah, I skipped that one as well. But
That's
the Filmation, was it Filmation? The Filmation animated series definitely shows up, except for season 2 when they introduced the Pink Dragon Gremlin. That's another story.
I couldn't tell you where I got them from, because obviously it wasn't movie related, but it was probably around the time the movie was out. But I distinctly remember my parents, getting these little 6-inch Flash Gordon figures, because I remember having the Lion Man of Mongo. I had, Prince Volton. I don't think I had Flash Gordon, but these were nods to the Flash Gordon series, but these weren't, they didn't have that in the movie. I know I had them. I'm not crazy, but
bananas.
But I couldn't.
They did action figures.
Yeah, but I couldn't. But they weren't, unless they were like just movie related and they just added stuff to it. But I do recall having those, and obviously they were mixed in with Star Wars and everything else. But yeah, that's a distinct point in time from my memory. Is anytime I see a Flash Gordon reference to the Lion Men, I'm like, oh, the figure. That's right. That's awesome. But it's obvious that it's that what you've done, and and all parties involved. This was a done with love and care, a passion project, very much in the same vein that like Modiphius did with Conan and John Carter of Mars. It wasn't just here's a license and we're just gonna just throw the periphery of information in there. There's backgrounds and information and all this stuff where it's done to honor the IP and the genre it represents. So a round of applause. I mean, another Big Savage Worlds friend of mine, Matt, Matt Kraft, absolutely loves, he went out of his way to buy the Savage Worlds Flash Gordon box set, to the point where it arrived, and he contacted me, and he was just, distraught. I ordered the box set with the hardback, and it arrived
with a softback.
What?
And didn't James do the same thing?
I don't know if James did, but he contacted them, and they said, "We'll replace it, no problem." And of course, I said, "So, what are you doing with those softbacks?" So they're on my shelf now, and so
if we cross paths, I'll make sure I sign them for you. Make sure.
Oh, excellent, excellent. Oh, yeah, absolutely. No, I mean we're not so far apart. It's on a good day. It's I've driven out to the Burbank area on a good day. I mean 3 a.m. I can get there in 30 minutes or less. But yeah,
wow.
Okay. It's not like you live in San Francisco, but no, that's technically. I mean, I won't be able to see you, but I will be in your area generally speaking. Next month, because my one friend Andy Markham, who lives in New York, he's come out to visit, and we're going to be playing a game with some of his friends out in LA when he comes out. And of course, at some point in time, I am going to make the trek to the H.P. Lovecraft Historical Society to play in one of their games that they run every once in a while.
That's literally down the street from me. Like, I drive by there all the time.
God, I feel like I'm so out of the loop living out here in the East Coast in coastal South Carolina, where this is like an inbred country. I mean, this is horrible out here.
We're not that special because we at least Scott and I we do get the three.
I mean, you got out there, you got Rodeo Drive, you have movie stars, not inbred rednecks.
I don't think I've ever driven
rebel
down
flags.
Rodeo Drive, but
me either. I mean, I've been down the Sunset Strip when I was younger several times, but yeah. Well, I mean, we've got all that California stuff. I mean, it is one of those things. I mean, I live and grew up. I live closer to Disneyland and grew up in Anaheim, and so I don't know what your experience is with it, Scott, but it tends to be the typical SoCal thing. It's like, oh my God, you live near Disneyland. Don't you go all the time? Now, there are a lot of Disney aficionados, but I mean, I did for a long time, but it was one of those things where it always seemed like, well, yeah, it's there. We either I go all the time, or it's like, I just, go maybe more like the beach. The beach may be one of those things too, depending on where you live, but
right.
All those things that, you take advantage of and people come out, but it's Disneyland. It's right there. It's like, yeah, I go when I go. And it's like, how do you resist?
I'm an Inspire key holder, so magic key holder. So we go pretty frequently. And amusingly, Sunday we were at the beach. So
oh yeah, but I mean,
I live 20 minutes from the 25, 30 minutes from the beach. I don't ever go to the beach. But
that's all right. So speaking of this town, though, I was going to say one other fun little Flash Gordon side note.
Yes.
We did get a box set when Taika Waititi announced that he was going to be doing a Flash Gordon movie, so we got a box set to him. So,
nice.
I do have a Flash Gordon question for you.
Yes, there we go. I was just going to bring it up for you.
I grew up. I've watched the original Flash Gordon movie growing up as a kid and all of that stuff, and I do watch it from time to time. We have a question for you, and we'll kind of wrap up this episode on this question. Who would win in a fight, Flash Gordon or Buck Rogers?
Flash Gordon. Because I'll tell you one of the reasons why. If you look in the old strips, Flash is for at least a couple of years, about a year, he's like basically wandering around in underpants, and he's still taking on villain after villain, and amusingly killing them outright. If you go through those original strips, he is just wantonly murdering character one after another. It really
in his underwear.
A joke.
Okay.
Basically in a pair of underpants. And there's a frequent method of murder that he employs, which is hurling people to their death. It almost got to a point where I was going to do a setting rule about like a special action you could do where you could hurl people. I do have a few references in there to hurling, but it's, I don't know what it was, but Alex Raymond, who did those original strips, he loved having Flash hurl people to their doom. He would throw them in volcanoes, off walls, just constantly lifting people above his head and hurling them. So yeah, that's what would happen with Buck. Buck would just walk up, say hi to Flash, and Flash would hurl him over the side of the palace in Mingo City. So.
Well, I'm sure if Lorraine Williams would actually hear this episode, she would effing cringe hearing that.
Well, I mean, and to be fair, the original Flash Gordon versus the original Buck Rogers, Flash had a proper spaceship. He wasn't flying around in biplanes and propeller airplanes and whatnot.
Fair dues.
He did it proper. Before Keith mentioned, we'll be wrapping up here shortly, but there's just one more thing, Scott, I want to point out in regards to you and your geek cred. You've authored so many of things. You're a playwright. You've got some cred regarding Doctor Who, Dark Shadows. You work in the movie industry. You've been involved in so many things, but one other thing that you're involved in that is adjacent, but also may light up a lot of our RPG listeners, and likewise maybe even some of the OSR fans that we have is you've done another book.
I forgot
in regards to the movie industry that focuses upon fantasy within the industry, cinema and
sorcery.
I have the PDF right here. Can you tell us a little? Can you tell us a little bit about this book, and what was it that brought you to write this book?
I'll try to be as quick as I can because I know we're trying to wrap up. But so what happened is my co-author and I, we were attending a signing at Dark Delicacies, which is here in Burbank. It's primarily a horror-themed bookshop. They carry everything related to horror, books, toys, etc. And he was here for a signing of a book that he had done, I think, on zombie films. And we happened to find a signed soundtrack for the movie Deathstalker 2. If you've never seen Deathstalker 2, I 100% urge you to go see it. It's absolutely hysterical. And it's a film that I had a blast writing the chapter on because we do, of course, include it in our book. But the thing about Deathstalker 2 is that the original script they were supposed to shoot, the director and lead chucked it in the trash and said, listen, if we do this movie, people are going to laugh at us. But if we write something else, we will have people laugh with us. So that's kind of how Deathstalker 2 happened. I was already a fan of Deathstalker 2, saw the signed soundtrack, bought it, and then we started talking. And he had worked on a book about zombie films, kind of similar in format to what we did with cinema and sorcery. And we started talking about, could we do a book that would be focused on the history of sword and sorcery movies? Yep. And we started to think about it, and the list started to grow of how many films there were. And we started to go back to the silent era and work our way up. And we realized, listen, if we do this book, we could cover, let's say, 50 films in great detail. Do really detailed chapters. We'll interview writers, directors, actors associated with these films, which we had access to, and then we'll do a vast index in the back of the book. And at the same time, we could also potentially introduce some gaming content. And of course, that was my suggestion because, of course, I'm the gaming nerd and my co-author is not. And so I said, listen, what I can do is I could write, a detail, say a monster or an item or a weapon or a character from each film, and give sort of generic stats so you could use it at your game table. We'll include that as part of each chapter. And we'll also include history in the gaming industry for each chapter as well when that film was coming out. So we put together a real nice pitch. And the first publisher we went to was Green Ronin, because Green Ronin had done 2 books on board games. One was about family games. One was about, I think, more strategic board games with sort of a slight edge on them about, how they fit in with the game RPG industry and with fans of gaming. So we went to them, pitched it, and they immediately said yes. They were the first publisher we went to.
Nice.
I mean, nice. I had this whole list of publishers we could potentially go to. The usual, if you're familiar with publishing and those kind of books, like McFarland is one of them. They do a lot of movie tie-in type books. Right. And 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 Chris Pramus from Green Ronin said, I love it. I want this book. We signed a contract and off we went. And that took about 5 years to put that thing together because, like I said, we had to reach out to a lot of pretty high-level people, film directors and screenwriters and music composers and, all these people. And they were all forthcoming. We got so much wonderful feedback. Everybody was sending us, emails, and we got, and oddly, coincidentally, Burt I. Gordon, who directed and I think wrote the film The Magic Sword, just died today. And even he in his 90s at the time responded to my inquiry and sent me all this great information, and he sent me a signed copy of his book. And so it's kind of a weird coincidence that he just passed away today. But yeah, and Jim Wynorski, who directed Death Stalker 2, John Terlesky, who was the lead, who played Stalker, he wrote back to us and gave us some great info. Another one, Bill Stout. He wrote the original screenplay for the movie Warrior and the Sorceress, which is a film with David Carradine. It's really a dire film. It's painful to watch. It's awful. Yeah. But he wrote the original screenplay, and then it kind of got stolen from him, and it was a really, really tied up dramatic situation. He wrote back 5 pages of information telling the story in great detail, to the point where I had to say, listen, can we release this stuff? I mean, are we going to libel someone? What's going to happen here? And he was like, nope, 100%. Put it all in your book. It's never been sold anywhere else. So Cinema and Sorcery is just loaded with stories that have never ever been told by people in the film industry for over many, many years. So yeah, that's how that kind of all came together. We divided up the films amongst each other, about 25 each. And we're really proud of it. It's not a project I would ever want to do again. It was grueling, but I'm very proud of that book.
After 5 years, I can imagine it was grueling.
Yes. We almost did a post-apocalypse film book, but unfortunately,
No,
I was going to air some dirty laundry. Unfortunately, my co-author and I we're not on speaking terms right now. So
okay,
that's an unfortunate thing. But we had a great time doing the project anyway.
It is a mighty tome. I mean, it is almost 500 pages.
Yeah,
and it's beefy.
It's a phone book.
And and just, for those listening, check it out. I mean, you can get it through Green Ronin. The PDF is available on drive-thru right now on sale for like $9. And it runs the gamut, as you said. It starts, with 1940s Thief of Baghdad, and you go as far in the writing of this up to the Hobbit movie.
Yeah, that's where we stopped.
And encapsulates everything within. And of course, anyone who's going to go through the list who likes this genre of movies, they're going to go, hey, what about this? What about that? But you said you picked 50 movies. So I've got a quick comment before, I didn't mean to step on your toes, Keith. Well, I did.
No, you're good. You're good.
No, but so out of these 50, I'm not going to, ask you for your absolute favorite one, but maybe out of these movies, what is maybe your top 2 or 3 favorite of these movies that are on this list?
That's pretty easy. Conan the Barbarian. The Schwarzenegger film is it's just excellent. Excalibur. And the thing about Excalibur is that I first saw it when it came out. My parents were kind enough to take me to go see it, which I'm sure they regretted. But I'm a huge fan of that film. Gosh, what else? I like Legend quite a lot. The Ridley Scott film with Tom Cruise. Tim Curry. Labyrinth is a blast. That's in there, of course. And then there's some lesser known ones. Like I was saying, Deathstalker 2 is just a gem. It's a hysterical film. Sword and the Sorcerer, another one from directed by Albert Pune, who passed away recently.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong. Is Sword and the Warrior and the Sorceress with Carradine? Is that the one with the 3-bladed sword that the two shoot off of? Okay,
that's Sword and the Sorcerer. That's the one I just recommended.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So
Richard Mall plays a villain, Bull from Night Court.
Right.
He's in
Oh,
that.
my God. Bull?
Yes.
He plays Zorsha. I think a sorcerer named Zorsha. That is a film where you will actually see a man fall to his death. And we do talk about that in the book. It's pretty horrible, but overall, it's a lot of fun to watch.
Right. All right. So another thing that you have in here outside of it is you've also added a chapter called a concordance of sword and sorcery, which is, I kind of think that's one of those things like maybe, a lot of the, those fans of that genre, the more of the pulpy sword and sorcerer aspects in there, and that includes many more things in the movies, does it not?
Oh, I'm trying to remember which section that would have been.
It's near the end. So a concordance of sword and sorcery movies, 1924 to 2015, and I think it just gives a brief paragraph. It includes some of the movies that you have in your top 50, but it does seem to give a little breakdown, as far as other ones that would fall under that. I mean, you've got, Adventures of Baron Munchausen and things such as that.
That is our complete index. So I think there's hundreds of movies that just did not get selected, but we did have to go through there and through vast resources to try to track down films. We also, in the front of the book, you'll actually read about how we chose the movies. Like what actually made a film a sword and sorcerer movie. Star Wars, the first Star Wars is in our book. That 100% qualifies. But there are certain other movies that did not. As soon as like midichlorians came in, it was like, okay, no, that's not sword and sorcery anymore. Now we're like leaning into science fiction. So yeah, there's a whole section that in the front of the book which talks about, when could dragons make a movie fantasy. And so yeah, there's that actually is a blast to read. And the other thing I'll say is that if you do get the book, I hope people enjoy reading it, because we try to make it as fun to read as possible. There are a lot of really silly anecdotes and a lot of Easter eggs, and we reading that thing, you'll learn our voices and our opinions really quickly, though we don't actually rate the movies. There's no like 5-star thing or anything like that, but we do share our opinions very openly about certain films. But we did try to write it really in a fun, sort of inviting way.
And thank you, both of you, for including, the animation genre in there. I mean, in my opinion, some of the best ones out there. You've included, The Last Unicorn. Oh yeah. You've included, you've included Disney's The Black Cauldron. We
didn't love it.
Yeah. I mean, again, rose-colored glasses for me. I was, it was definitely a troubled movie. There's a big history behind that I won't go into. But yeah, it was one of those things that, a young Scott, me, saw at the drive-in with my parents. And at the time, it's this there's no better Disney movie. But
it does have the scariest villain of all time for a Disney film.
But in hindsight, like so many things, don't never venture back. Some nostalgia is worth being left behind. So, but yeah, I mean, just going through it and whatnot, I'm definitely going to go through it, and it's definitely worth a read. If the listeners out there, if you're a fan of these sword and sorcery movies, if you're a fan of the genre in the games, it definitely is going to give you some insight into some movies you may not know, but B, the concordance of the sword and sorcery movies. The appendix that you have there is massive. I mean, if you type sword and sorcery movies on Google, you'll get maybe a list of 15 that we all know. But things in here is going to be eye-opening for a lot of people, and hopefully, allow them to see some of these other movies they may not be aware of. So, but yeah, I mean, Jesus Christ. Now before you go,
you recognize me without my sandals on? I'm impressed.
Now, before you go, the whole real reason why we invited you on is your wife. So what is it like being married to someone who, actually works on The Mandalorian? I'm joking. I am so joking.
Wow.
We've been, Keith and
we've been
waiting
to ask that.
Yeah. That's been bringing the money.
She's awesome. I mean, today's like the first International Day of the Women or something.
International Women's Day.
Women's Day, yeah. She's certainly the greatest woman in my life, without question.
Mm-hmm.
No, we both met in the film industry. I met her on her second day working in the film industry on the movie Carnosaur 2. And,
I've seen that.
That's our movie. That's where we first met.
Really?
So that goes back many, many, many years, and we've been together ever since. But yeah, so we met in the industry, and it was I got out of it because I really wanted to be writing, and I had the opportunity to break away and go work for Warner Brothers Television. And she stayed in it and grew and got to work on some absolutely amazing projects. If you take a look at her IMDb page, it's longer than all our arms combined, and she's worked on some huge blockbusters. But lately she's been spending most of her time in the Star Wars universe. So she's worked on all 3 seasons of The Mandalorian and the Book of Boba Fett and a couple other series that are coming soon. So
tell us
no secrets. They've already been announced, but what her involvement has not.
No, her list of creds is quite impressive. Her project, her credentials on like IMDb is just absolutely
it's vast.
Is amazing.
I get all the cool swag because I don't know if you can see it here. I got my Book of Boba Fett hoodie.
Right. Yeah, I saw that. I mean, nice. I'm not. Scott will tell you, I'm not like the sci-fi guy. Like I generally don't like game sci-fi. I don't watch sci-fi movies and stuff. Generally, I mean, I grew up watching Star Wars in the theater growing up as a kid. My parents taking me and stuff, the original Star Wars and all that. My wife is the one that takes my now 21-year-old when he was a child to go see the latter Star Wars movies in the theater and do all the movies and stuff with him. But I know when things are good, they may not be for me, like role-playing games, right? Like we talked about earlier, right? They may be good, but they may not be my cup of tea.
Right.
But I appreciate good things and people that enjoy good things and people that make good things. And your wife contributes to making fantastic things that lots of people, millions of people enjoy. So on the recording of this episode, International Women's Day, thank your wife for me. Thank your wife for my wife, my granddaughter for doing fantastic things. So yes, thank you.
Yes.
I will definitely pass it along.
Big shout out to her. I've
never been to set.
I mean, why did we have you on? Can we just,
can we just get your wife on here?
Yeah, just slide to the right.
Slide to the right. Get your wife. So she's driving home. So.
Fine.
She's stuck on the 405 for the next 5 hours. 405.
Yes.
That's the highway, right? The 405.
Right. Yes. Yeah. Yes. So Scott, this has been fantastic, and I hope we covered a lot of the areas that you would like to cover. Definitely, there's a lot more that we can talk about. So, sometime in the near future, we got to get you back on,
Absolutely.
Pick your mind about a few things. And likewise, I do. And Keith, correct me if I'm wrong, but I almost feel just with Scott's background, the movies he's done and his experience with life.
He should run games for us.
Well, not only that, but I see I see almost a podcast romance forming that if we actually got them on, that if we had Scott and Levi Combs on at the same time.
Oh my God, that would be
to have a discussion about like B films and Grindhouse and Toxic Avenger.
Oh my God, that would be so awesome.
Hammer Horror. We could actually press play and just come back in an hour and a half.
I'm sure we'd have a great time.
Just hit record and walk away. We'd have an episode in the making.
Yes. So Levi, we found your podcast soulmate. So we'll have your person call us.
Have your people call our people. We'll call Scott's people.
Yeah,
there you go.
But no, I would love to get Scott back and maybe get Debbie on the show. We've had her on the show in the past, and bring Debbie on because I know, Scott, you're aware Debbie is a absolute fan of ETU and a supporter of Pinebox Texas Middle U.
Yeah,
middle school.
Middle school, yeah. When I heard her talk about that was her most anticipated game of 2023. I wept a little bit. Tears of joy.
So before we wrap up this episode, I know we're running long, but
this is the third time we've said that.
Tonight. I don't give two shits.
It's how it goes, yeah.
Okay, so you went from ETU to Pinebox Middle.
Right.
What the hell happened to high school?
What do you mean? What the hell's
where did high school go? You went from college to middle school.
Oh, you missed the key word.
It's not that it's not there, but it's a gap we could fill.
Yeah.
That's what I wanted to know.
I'll tell you one thing. When I started writing Pinebox Middle School, and this kind of goes along with Flash as well, the first thing I always do is I write a document for myself of all the potential spin-off or supplemental
Sure.
projects that can be done.
That makes sense.
With Flash, we only got to do one. Two. But and there were many more. With Pinebox, yes, there are other things. There are also things that were in the original manuscript that we yanked out that are potentially going to wind up elsewhere. So yeah, the universe is ever expanding. It's all ours. Pinebox is our IP, so we can do whatever we want with it. And there very well maybe some other things that are going to step things up in age.
I think you'll make Debbie a very, very happy lady with that.
But it's like we also wanted to make sure that when we did our middle school, that it was not an 80s throwback, because there are 16,000 of those, and Stranger Things kind of dominated. So it's contemporary, and that makes it very different. Cell phone use is a fantastic thing in our game, and we also didn't want to just do a Buffy clone, so that's why we didn't want to necessarily just do a high school. So our high school, if we do a high school, Pinebox High School, a Pinebox High, it'll be something different.
Okay. No, I mean, I was curious because you had the college with the university, and then you had middle school, but obviously that there was that gap of years missing, and I didn't know if it was on purpose or if that was going to be another path to go down the road.
I can say no more. All I can say is that it just seemed like the right time for us to do middle school. So
that's fair.
I think I speak for everyone when I say I am looking forward to Lone Star Preschool when it comes out, and all the horrors that happen with whatever.
I can't do this podcast anymore.
Hey, like I said, I write my own material, and it only happens in the beginning and at the end. I'm allowed to.
Yeah, I know. Okay. One last thing before we wrap up this episode. Okay. Yes. So since I am a fan of Kids on Bikes, I would like to ask you, Scott, would you be down to run a game for Scott and I as an actual play for the podcast at your convenience down the road somewhere, of Between the Cracks, your scenario, your setting of Kids on Bikes?
Possibly.
Okay.
My focus right now is obviously more on Pinebox Middle School, but
yes,
but I'll give it some thought.
Okay.
But
or you know what? Or at your convenience, you might even be able to entice me to do some Pinebox Middle using Savage Worlds. How's
Except
that?
for Debbie would have to play.
Debbie would have to play.
There we go.
We couldn't do it without Debbie.
There we go.
She would strangle me next time we got together at Gen Con. And
are you guys going to Gen Con, by the way?
2024 is the plan.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, I would love to. There's a slim chance in hell. I mean, I highly doubt it. It's one of those things where, if we're doing it, it would be like a buddy hop year after year after year. We couldn't, just because I've got younger kids and whatnot.
If my son wasn't graduating from college this year.
Yeah. But one thing I am definitely going to try to do.
If my son's listening, if you weren't graduating in May, I would be at Gen Con this year, buddy.
I would definitely like to attend a DunDragCon 1 year.
That was fun.
Yes.
I'm doing KublaCon next, which will be in May.
What convention is that? Is that Drag Con, like Drag Queen Con?
No, DunDragCon. Back in the 70s, they didn't know how to name conventions and made them, word them properly. So DUN DR, is it DRAGCON, right?
It's Dun from Dungeon. Dra from
Dragons, and
I thought I was gonna have to get like drag clothes or something.
That's fine.
You do what you want to do.
Yeah.
All right. No, I'm not like proud to do anything. I'm cool.
Yeah. So, well, I mean, so one more thing, and then no, I'm just kidding. But
let's wrap this sucker up.
We've
been going an hour and a half.
Yeah. Excuse me.
One more thing.
Just one more thing. Yeah. So again, Scott, this has been awesome. I hope you've enjoyed yourself. I know that we've enjoyed the conversation we've had. Again, definitely please come back on. There's so many more things that we can talk about, and maybe get you involved with some other guests. Much success with the coming Pinebox Middle School. I mean, it's definitely, you've got a great fan base. I've got to say, you're very, very blessed to have that. And you do have one of the biggest fans of the RPG hobby, who's got your back. So, Anything else that you would like to plug, and also where can they find you on the socials if you have anything like that you'd like to add?
Well, there's more. So there's potentially some more Savage World stuff in the pipeline that I'm working on. You can also read, if you ever read the Pinnacle Entertainment Group newsletter that comes out every week. Yep. I write all that. So that's one of my little side jobs that I do for them. Cool. So yeah, I write the news. I've been writing the news for Pinnacle for quite a few years now. So that's why I'm always there. You can find my bio on their website as well. I'm not on Twitter, but really I mainly just do Facebook and Instagram at the moment. Right. So you can find me in those areas. And I'll be at KublaCon at the end of May up in the Bay Area, and I'll be running their Savage Saturday Night event. We're going to have at least 6 or 7 tables running Savage Worlds all at the same time. And I'm running Pinebox Middle School there. And I'm also going to be running a sort of a homebrew of the characters are going to be from Unit from Doctor Who. So doing that as well. So that'll be a lot of fun.
All right.
And I'll be at Gen Con.
Yes.
Find me.
Fantastic. All right. Well, this has been a wonderful time, Scott. Thank you for coming onto the show. On behalf of Scott and I, again, thank you. Listeners, you know where to find Scott and I. You can find us on the Rolling Boxcars Discord. There's a Titterpigs section. You can hang out there. There's the chatter channel. Hang out with us there, chat with us. You know where to find us on our social medias. Scott's got his Twitter. I've got my Twitter. We'll have all of that in the show notes. Wow. This wraps up episode 23. Holy crap.
And your 5th beer, apparently.
No. I've only had 2 beers tonight. I'm going to keep this up.
Right. So, and just one thing to add before we say our adieu. Coming up episodes in Titterpigs is, of course, we've got Scott A. Woodward, who is here with us.
Woodard.
I'm sorry, Woodard. The first one I made.
Scott A. Woodward is the guy who asked the FBI agents to investigate.
I pronounced it properly the first time, and I haven't been drinking, so that's all on me.
You're going to give me fucking shit.
Yes. But coming up, we're having an interview with the authors of Mork Borg. Pele and Johan, and then coming up after that, hopefully we'll be discussing virtual tabletops. Keith and I, we're going to talk about the pluses, the minuses, the virtual tabletops that we like, some that have established, some that are coming, and then some also
died on the vine.
Yeah. And then also we're going to be having Kevin Burrup of the successful Kickstarter campaign, who's going to be running an actual play for us of his fantastic game Burn 2D6. So
looking forward to it.
All right. Well, I mean, just watching you drink those beers, Keith, now I gotta go have one. Everyone,
just
take care.
2.
Yes. 2 45 ounces.
Wow. Colt 45s, baby. And those 40 ounces.
All right. This has been probably the most raucous one we've had so far. So
this is good. Great. I like these episodes. These are fun.
This is going to be easy to edit because we're not editing anything. We're not editing a minute of it. Nope. Everyone, take care and happy gaming.
Happy gaming, everybody.
And your friends will never live to see it. Take the prisoners at once to the Tunnel of Terror. His son and his lion men.